Welcome to Pick Up and Deliver, the podcast where I pick up my audio recorder as I head out for a walk and deliver an episode to you while I stroll around. I'm Brendan Riley. Well, good morning, listeners. It is a gloomy, cloudy, late October day here in suburban Chicago, October 21st. To be exact, it is precisely 2 weeks since I released my last episode of Pick Up and Deliver. No particular reason, it's just been a busy time around my place and I've had not that much to talk about. So I haven't made an episode. We've been gaming about the same amount as normal. It's just the natural ebb and flow of gamer life. So I guess I thought I would talk a little bit about just a couple gameplays recently that have been fun, and then I would dig into the topic for the day. So recent gameplays, I've really enjoyed returning to some old favorites. I've gotten a few games back to the table that I haven't played in a while, but have been games I really enjoyed. Most significantly, Last Will. My wife and I introduced Last Will to my wife last week. Last Will is, of course, the Vladimir Suchy game about spending all of your inheritance. It's incredibly thematic. It's a fun tableau builder with a bit of worker placement and an interesting turn auction at the beginning where you, kind of like in Five Tribes or like in a lot of the earlier Vladimir Suchy games, particularly 20th Century does this, where you choose one of several options for what kinds of the arrangement of actions and errands that you're going to get, and then you get to go before or after other people based on when those actions occurred. It's an interesting game. It involves a lot of manipulation of systems and involves setting up a tableau that allows you to spend money. I realized I forgot to introduce the plot. So the idea is that your uncle has died and he made a ton of money in his life but never enjoyed it. So he's giving it to you to spend. And each player gets a little bit of money, and the person who spends their money the fastest then gets the rest of the uncle's money. It's a pretty silly theme, but fun and amusing. My wife enjoyed it. I did win by 2 points, -10 to -8. I was 10 pounds in debt at the end of the game, and she was 8 pounds in debt. I imagine next time we play, she'll beat me. We also played London, and that one was really fun. As usual, I am really outclassed in that game. She consistently clobbers me, and I think that's why it's one of her favorites. So I'm glad to get that to the table. That's a fun one. Over on Tabletop Simulator in the last couple weeks, I've played a round of Elysium with some pals and a game of Brass Birmingham, both of which were quite delightful. I did pretty badly in Brass Birmingham. I did fine in Elysium. I don't think I won either game, but I had a really good time with both. I'm enjoying the Tabletop Simulator mods for those games and continuing in my goal of only downloading Tabletop Simulator mods that I either pay for, which I haven't actually done yet, or for games that I already have. I have gotten to try a couple new games, but I'll wait to talk about those for a Shooting from the Hip episode. So I'm going to skip that for now. It's been overall a decent gaming month, but not an aggressive one. I suspect this is going to come in as one of the lowest number of games played this year, particularly because I don't have a game day planned until November 1st, so that will not be part of October. Though it looks like we will probably play a few games here in October. On to the subject of the day. Over the last couple of weeks, I have been mucking around with my collection a little bit during some downtime, moving things around, playing around with InDesign, and I have rearranged my game collection on my shelves. I started doing this when I was listening to or watching a Rahdo episode, and I really liked the way his Kallax shelves looked behind him. What he's done is, instead of having the games facing sideways like a bookshelf, he has a game facing out. So you can see the beautiful cover art for the game on his Kallax shelf, which is pretty cool. And he mentioned that he did that in part because he noticed that the Kallax shelves are like 15 inches deep or 16 inches deep, and most games don't need that much space width-wise. So he discovered if he pushes the games back, he can put one more game on the front, and then he can store an extra bunch of games, and it also looks really nice. And I said to myself, hey, that's a great idea. You can store a bunch of extra games, and it looks really nice. So it's the bunch of extra games part that's really very exciting to me. So with that in mind, I rearranged the shelves. I picked out 20 or so games that I can store vertically that have nice covers, and I move those to the front of each of the cubes in my shelf. Now it looks lovely, and it stores a bunch more games. As I said, I've added basically 20 more games now fit on the shelves that didn't before. However, it's much harder to find games because now all the games that are in those cubes are hidden behind these things. So with that in mind, I have now added a inventory system to the game collection. So I already keep my collection updated on BoardGameGeek, so I started by downloading that spreadsheet, and then I used InDesign to, I grabbed covers for all the games and the little descriptions that BoardGameGeek has. As a side note, I found a whole bunch of my games, something in the range of 80 to 90 games, did not have those little descriptions written. So I wrote descriptions for all of those, which means that my current inbox on BoardGameGeek is a massive list of user submission approved emails from the mods, as something like 80 or 90 content changes went in from me over the course of the last few weeks. But so using those descriptions and a couple of key stats like playtime, I then made these little cards the size of trading card game cards, like Magic cards, and I put them all in a binder organized by game type and roughly by alphabet. And so the idea is that now, instead of having to go downstairs and look through my collection, you can look through this binder to see all the games we have. And there are a couple of reasons I chose this mode. The main one being, I think it'll help us play games that we don't play as often because we'll be reminded that they're there without having to look carefully through all the shelves. It's a lot faster to kind of flip your eyes through the binder. It also helps because with each, I also labeled all of the cubbies on the Kallax and the different spaces in the collection, and the location where each game is written in pencil on the card. I chose pencil because then if I feel like moving something, I can adjust it without having to print a new card. And then the idea is that as we go along and we decide to play games, we can use the collection to, we can use this binder to look at the collection. The last thing I have to do is print a more tightly formatted full alphabetical list that includes locations of games in alphabetical order, so that if you want to find a particular game, you don't have to try to figure out what category I've put it in order to look it up in the cube. You say, I want to play Last Will. You don't have to find it in the binder, because at the front of the binder there'll be an alphabetical list of all the games, and you can just look at that. Which leads me to, so I guess the way that I divide this up is that partly I am sharing with you the news of the day, or the news of the game collection, and then partly with you I'm going to talk a little bit about organizing stuff. Now, my favorite thing to do in the realm of cleaning things is organizing stuff. I love taking things and moving them around and arranging things in different manners, and I love sorting, and organizing things is a key enjoyment of mine. I know, it's kind of dumb, but I love it. So I thought I would talk a little bit about the different ways one might organize things and what that could mean for those of you looking to organize your collection. So let's talk about a little bit, what are some of the ways you can organize your collection? Now, if you're going to be a pedant and you have lots of space, pedants, right, pay a lot of attention to detail. They're often annoying about it. Then you have more options. If you have a small collection and plenty of space, you can do lots of interesting things. Like you can organize by alphabet. This would, of course, help you find games very fast. I think organizing alphabetically is not optimal. I'll talk more about the main reasons that is in a minute. But the first reason would be that it's not good for browsing. When you are browsing for a game, you often have in mind a kind of game you want to play. Not always, but usually. An alphabetized collection does not help you do that at all. Another way, if you're going for a more visual approach, would be to alphabetize by color, or organize by color. I've never tried this with my collection, but I think it would be pretty interesting to have a kind of rainbow of games where I add a game to a shelf or a cube or whatever based on the color that it has, and then you get this really cool visual look when you're looking at your shelf. I did this for a while with our bookshelves. We organized by size and by color, and that made for a really interesting looking bookshelf, but it was a real pain in the butt to find anything because there is almost no rhyme or reason for the content of the things being organized. It's entirely about the design. And that's not helpful when you have a thing you want to find. For the last couple of years, I have used box shape as my primary way of organizing. And that's because my collection is too big for my space. As it is, my collection currently takes up a big chunk of the corner of our basement. We have 4 2x4 Kallax shelves. We store them vertically, so 2x4. The thick piece runs up and down, and they're next to each other. So it makes a grid of 4x8 squares. In the middle, second row, in the middle 2 are some drawers, but otherwise the collection is mostly in those shelves. I also keep a lot of games on top of those shelves, up above. I have another smaller bookshelf off on the side in which 2 of the 3 shelves are full of small games. And then on the other side, there's a side table with a bunch more games. And usually those are really big games or games that haven't found a more permanent spot in the collection. There's also another spot over in a different part of the basement that is for games that are for sale or games that have been marked for sale. I might not be actively selling them yet, but I don't consider them part of the collection anymore. They're currently waiting to go away. So I organized the collection by labeling the cubes, columns A through H and rows 1 through 4. 2 of the cubes have little drawers in them, so those are D2A, D2B, E2A, and E2B. Then I labeled the top of each big shelf, like AB top, BC, CD top, EF top, GH top. Then I is that bookshelf off on the sides. There's I1 and I2, and then side table. So those are most of the places that a game might be listed as located in my collection. The other option would be if it's at school, because I do stuff with some games at my college, so it'll say the initials of my college, or if it's on loan to a friend. In my database, I will say on loan. In the collection notes, it'll just say on loan. So for me, this presents the best of both worlds. It allows me to organize by box shape, which gives me maximum efficiency in the collection. I stick as many games as I can in the cubes. They're all organized by box size so that a stack of boxes is all pretty uniform, and that gives me the maximum space next to it to put a vertical box or something like that. And then the binder allows for secondary kinds of organization. So like I said, there's already going to be a list, which I haven't printed yet, but I'm keeping a spreadsheet, that's just the alphabetical list of all the games along with their location. But then I have a secondary. The main organization is not an alphabetical list. It's these index cards, or these cards, which show you what the games are. They give you a cover and a little bit about the game. Those cards are organized by 7 different categories of gameplay. This is the part that took the most thinking, is how to organize those games. So here's the categories I've used. There's filler, party game, 2-player game, solo game, family/light game, medium game, and heavy/long game, and cooperative game. I don't know if I said that. So with each game, I had to evaluate which category it fit best in. For instance, there's a lot of games that fit into family light and cooperative. Forbidden Island, for instance, I would probably put in both of those categories. Usually the family/light, medium, and heavy/long categories are there to help organize games that do not fit in one of the other categories well. So like I have a lot of games in the 2-player category that do fit in either medium or heavy. Like for instance, A Few Acres of Snow is in the 2-player category. I certainly wouldn't call that family/light. I call that medium, but it's in the 2-player category because if we're looking for 2-player games, that's where we're going to go. Star Wars Rebellion is also in the 2-player category, even though technically it plays 4. So generally, one of the first 5 categories, filler, party, 2-player, solo, cooperative, those categories, if a game fits those, it goes in that first. Then in the games that don't fit there, I rate based on this sort of sliding scale of difficulty. And the way it goes is just basically a game can go in family/light, if I'd happily play it or teach it to my mom. My mom is a very enthusiastic gamer in terms of if we say, hey, let's play a game, she'll say, sure. She likes it better when we play games she's played before rather than having to learn new games all the time. But she's a sport. When we say, why don't we try a new game, she goes, sure, she'll try it. And she's pretty good about enjoying lots of those. That said, I generally try not to show her the games that are very complicated because it's not fun to be confused or whatever. And she usually understands them enough to play them. They're just at a level of depth that exceeds her level of pleasure for those games. So for me, in my head, the bar where I say it's no longer a family/light game is would I think my mom would like it, or would be able to play it and enjoy it. I'm not saying she would enjoy it, and this is a crucial distinction, that when I'm drawing these categories, I'm thinking about complexity and length, not about enjoyment. So sometimes I'll put a game in one of these categories that I think using that bar it would work, but it doesn't mean that the person would enjoy it. The medium games are games I generally think that are games my wife would enjoy, or my wife would certainly be able to play well and kick my butt at. Some of the games fit my temperament or my play style better than hers, but I generally put a game into the medium category if it's a bit longer and a bit more complex, but not extremely long or complex. Like, for instance, Everdell is sort of at the higher end of the medium weight games that I have. And that's kind of a subjective opinion, and over time it may change. Whenever I want to change the category of a game, I will have to reprint the card. So I'm not going to do that very often, I don't think. But so the games that are organized as medium are games that don't fit those other categories. Now, when a game does fit that category, like I've mentioned Forbidden Island as being a family/light game, then I put family/light in the info box for Forbidden Island. So if you're looking at it in the co-op section, you can then see how difficult it is to play. Finally, heavy/long games are exactly what they sound like. Games that are really complex and or really long, or often both. One thing I haven't mentioned yet, I do have 2 cases that I bought a long time ago after seeing Tom Vassell talk about them on the Dice Tower. And these are photo cases I got them from Michaels. They are a plastic case about maybe 18 inches wide and 9 inches high or something, give or take. And they have little spots on them that hold photo cases. So inside they have these plastic boxes that are 4x6 that are meant to hold stacks of pictures that are 4x6. And the case holds, I think, 12 of them, maybe 18 of them, of these plastic cases. And so what I did is I have a bunch of small games that are either still in their box and then just put right in the case, or if they come in a slightly bigger box, I'll take them out of the box and put them in the case, and then I label the case. So games like Guillotine and Oh My Goods and Love Letter and Flux and Chrononauts and all sorts of small card games and Bonanza end up in these boxes, which makes them very easy to transport and very easy to find because you can read the labels through the front of the case, which is clear. So I have 2 cases like that are full of games, and those are on top of the shelves, and so those have their own label, case A and case B. So for the games that are in there, instead of saying like on top of shelf AB, it says case A, because that's where they are. And I've found that to be a pretty handy way to store the games as well. So how do you store your game collection, dear listener? Do you organize it regularly? Does it overflow beyond the bounds of what you can store? What do you enjoy about it? What do you dislike about it? What are your challenges? What are your delights in organizing your game collection? Hop over to Board Game Geek Guild 3269 and let me know. And I look forward to seeing you. If you want to see pictures of the collection, I'll post some pictures in the Rattlebox Games page for this episode. Go to rattleboxgames.com and click on the link that says podcasts to find the page about this episode. I will also try to remember to post a link to this episode page in the Board Game Geek Guild. Thanks for joining me today. I hope that your next walk is as pleasant as mine was. Bye-bye.
Brought to you by Rattlebox Games.